Hi folks, Chuck Black here. We are doing 52 weeks of Python. We are in week 24, and this week we're going to talk about regular expressions. We're kind of going back and looking at some intermediate Python stuff in the midst of doing our files. We will resume that with the next lesson, but this one we're going to talk about regular expressions, and they've been around for a while. We're not going to go into all of the details of all the different things you can do with regular expressions, but for the benefit of those of you who are new, we will look at some simple basics of using regular expressions. Then we will dive into looking at things like MAC addresses, IP addresses, etc. We'll use tools to help us to decode and match regular expressions. So this one that I'm looking at is regex101.com. And I've written some software that actually goes through and tries to compare input that you give to see if it is a valid MAC address, IP address, host name, or email address. And so we will look at the code that does that, and there's some interesting stuff that's not specifically regular expression related in there as well. So you might want to give it a look. Hopefully this will be useful if you're interested at all in regular expressions. So let's get started with the lesson. So let's talk a little bit about regular expressions. Some of you may not be familiar with exactly what a regular expression is. And so let's give a few examples. I'm here on this website that I tend to like to use, regex101.com. And this allows you to type in a pattern or copy and paste in a pattern and then type stuff down here to see if it is a match, because that's fundamentally what regular expressions are about. They're about matching stuff. So let's start as simple as possible. I'm going to type in my name here. So that is my regular expression. And let me type in something right here and see if I can get it to match. If I type in Chuck, you can see that, yeah, sure enough, it highlighted it in baby blue here. And so it has found a match. It also tells me that it found a match here. Now, one thing that I could do is I could do something a little bit different. My name is Chuck. Did that match? Yeah, that matched. And now I could say Chuck is my name, and that matched as well. You see, we're just matching CHUCK sequentially, those 5 letters, and it's matching it there. Now, something that you might want to do is say, well, what if I only wanted it to be matched if it was at the beginning of the line? Well, you can use a special character. Now, we use special characters a lot in regular expressions, and so I put this beginning of the line. So as you can see, when I hover over this, it even says asserts position at start of line, and you can see that these two were successful and this one here wasn't. And likewise, this won't surprise you. If I get rid of this, now the character that we use for the end of the line is what in the United States is a $sign. And you can see, oh, well, 2 of them matched. Guess what? This one here, Chuck, matched because there's an end of line right there. And this one that had text before it matched as well. If I hover over this, it says asserts position is at the end of the line. And if I wanted to match for both of these, then I could, of course, do this. And this one matches only if the line consists of just the letters C, H, U, C, K. And because we have a test at the beginning and at the end of the line. Let's continue to make this a little bit more interesting. And for those of you that are a little bit impatient, as you can see here, I do have some more robust and network-oriented regular expressions. We're going to get to those, but we're just doing a little bit of background. Now, when I've dealt with people from Asia, many times they end up writing my name like this. Chuck, how could I match that as well? Well, there's a special character in regular expression land, which is a question mark, and a question mark says match 0 or 1 occurrences of this particular item. So here you can see it, the quantifier matches between 0 and 1. So now my regular expression is starting to look kind of funny, like it's not something English that you would read, and that's okay. That's just how regular expressions tend to be. And so being able to parse and understand the special characters, what their meaning is, can be a useful thing. Now, what if I didn't want to only match Chuck, but I also wanted to match Chick as well? Well, one thing that I could do would be I could put brackets around this character that I want to be either you or I want it to be something else. And then what I would do when you have brackets like this, let's see if it says match a single character present in the set. So if I wanted to match Chuck or Chick, then I could put an I in there. Now, if you were to read this like a human, you would say, what am I looking for? CHUIC ? No, these are all special characters. You need to understand how to parse that just a little bit. So here, what is this saying? Well, it matches Chuck. I've got this question mark in here, so it matches CHUK. Let's see if it matches CHICK. And sure enough, it matched CHICK. Not only that, because we have the optional C in there, CHIK should be a match as well. And sure enough, it is. So this is how you say match one of these characters in here. So you'll see examples where they have like A-E-I-O-U to match any vowel, things of that nature. So that is possible as well. So the next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, what if I want to match two occurrences of this string in a row? And the way that we can do that is as follows. I'm going to put a grouping around the Chuck regular expression that we have. And now I'm going to use curly brackets to specify that we need to have two of these. And so what's going to happen is, let me do this one right here, CHICK. So you can see here, it did match because I specified it matches only two times. You see how it's saying quantifier matches only two times. Now, guess what? I don't have to do the same exact thing. I can say Chick Chuck. I could say Chick Chuck without the C. It will match two occurrences of any of these particular options. And when we get into looking at like MAC address and consistently using colon or dash, you'll see that this variability and its ability to match various things can be a blessing, but it can also be a curse, and it can be not exactly what we want. So this is going to allow us to match some number, and so we specify that number. We can specify between 1 and 3. We could specify whatever we wanted to do here. So if I were to do 1, 2, then it matches one occurrence and it matches two occurrences. So you can see that you can do stuff like that. Okay, this is a very brief overview of regular expressions. This isn't intended to be exhaustive. Let's go to the code and see what I'm doing with that. So in the code, as you can see, I have stuck regular expressions in with all of these intermediate Python things. Chronologically, we had just finished XML, and we're doing CSV, and I'm going back and adding something in here because I thought this would be a good idea. So this is where you will find the code for regular expressions if you go out to the repository and look for it as soon as I've posted it up there, which I may have done already, but if not, I will make sure I do it today. Here is this code that we're going to use, and what I want to do is I want to zoom out a little bit before we dive into all the nitty-gritty details of these regular expressions, and let's see how we use regular expressions in Python. Now, this outer loop I'm going to explain in just a minute, but right now I want you to concentrate with me on this while loop. I'm saying while true, that means I'm going to do this forever or until I hit a break statement, which you can see right here, and I'm going to take input, and I'm going to ask the user to input either a MAC address, IP address, hostname, or email, and I'm going to store that in input to validate, and if they input nothing, then we're going to break and we're going to go to the next item in the sequence. And if they have given us something, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for the existence of that string in the pattern that I'm looking at this particular point in time. So basically, I'm going to call into this regular expression library. This is what we use in Python typically, or most people use, is RE to do regular expression checking in Python. And like you can imagine from what we've done, we're going to be doing a search to see if there is a match. And what we pass in is the actual pattern, the regular expression, and then we're going to say, okay, this is the input that I just got. See if it's in there. And if match is not none, that means if it's not null, that means we found it. And we're going to say, okay, well, we found it, and we're going to print out exactly where we found it. And if it is none, then we're going to print out that we were unable to find this particular thing. And just for fun, I said, let's print a rude remark at the end. And the rude remark isn't terribly rude. It's just, no way, Jose, give me a break, Jake, or nice try, McFly. You can do whatever you want if you're writing this code yourself. Anyway, that's what we're going to do. Now, let's take a step back from this code and look at this loop here. What am I doing? We're going to look at the regular expression in a minute, but I want you to learn this. I could have written this exact code 4 different times. The first time I could have done it for MAC addresses, the second time for IP addresses, the third time for host names, and the fourth time for email addresses. And I began to do that when I was only looking at MAC and IP addresses. When I decided to add host name and email, I said to myself, is there a better way to do this where I can just reuse the code? And this is going to be at the expense a little bit of readability, especially for people who are new, but it's with the benefit of having to write this code only once. So let's look at what I did. What did I do? I created these strings called MAC address, IP address, host name, and email. That's because, as you can see, I used them multiple times throughout the code. Well, these 2 times that you see right here. And what if I just typed in this string literal here? Could I do that? Yes, I could. But what if I spelled it wrong in one of these instances? I spelled wrong MAC address or IP address. I spelled it one way here. In fact, I actually did this as I was writing the code, which caused me to do it in this manner and to use these constants. I typed in IP address in quotes, just like this for the first one right here. And then for the second one, I typed in IP ADDDRESS without realizing it in quotes. And because they didn't match, then I ended up with problems. So always a good idea when you're writing code, if you're going to use a string literal more than once, and even maybe if you're using it just once, because for future expandability you might want to do this, you're going to want to use a variable. Now, you'll notice that this is capitalized. Why is this capitalized? And does Python treat it differently if it's capitalized? Let me answer the second question first. The answer is no. Python absolutely does not treat it differently. You could use a mix of caps and small. You could not use underscores. You could use camel case. You could use snake case like we're doing right here. You can do it however you want. That is meaningless to Python. But by convention, in all programming languages, at least the ones that I've used, which would be Java and C and Python now, and I suspect JavaScript as well, we tend to use capitals for constants. What is a constant? It just means that I do not intend to change this. Could I down here change MAC address by adding some text to it? Yes, I could. But this, again, is Python allows you to do anything. By convention, I'm stating my intention that this is going to be a constant and it will never change. And people are used to seeing that and saying, oh, well, that's what that is. It's not a variable. It's a constant. And maybe as you're looking at this, you might say to yourself, why didn't you make those capital as well? And I would say, touche, good point. Perhaps I should have, but I didn't. So there you go. But this is, in general, this is a good example where you can end up having things get messed up if you use string literals. And the main point is whether you capitalize this or not, In the olden days, we would prepend C or something to make sure that people knew that it was a constant. We have evolved or devolved, or however you want to look at it, to just use all caps in order to do that. That's the important thing that I'm teaching you right here, is to use some type of constant to do this. And it's the same way with here, right? I could do RE. This is a good example to use. If I wanted to, I could not create this thing RE email, and I could specify this down in the code over and over again. But just think of the possibility for doing an error here. Or if I make a change, then I would have to make the change everywhere. So good programming practice, use constants, or use something to define your string literals. We'll call them constants for now, even though that's not a concept in Python, but it's a convention. So what am I going to do here? This is what I'm going to do. I have defined a MAC address, IP address, hostname, and email. Those are just strings that I'm going to be using. I'm creating a list, which is going to be these strings right here: MAC address, IP address, hostname, and email. All this is, it is what? What type of data structure is it? You can tell me it is a list. And what are the items in it? Well, I can see that the items are strings. The first string is MAC address, the second string is IP address, the third string is hostname, and the fourth is email. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to define something. Now, what is this? You look at that and you see the curly braces, and then here you see the colon in the middle, so you know that that's a key value pair. That tells you this is a dictionary. And my dictionary key of MAC address is going to be the regular expression for MAC address, which is this thing up here. And my item with a key of IP address is going to be the IP address regular expression. My key of hostname is going to be the hostname regular expression, and my email is going to be the email. That allows me to do this for loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm going through this validation list. That is this list right here. And the first time through, what am I going to be dealing with? I'm going to be dealing with the MAC address. So this validation type variable, the first time through, is going to be the MAC address. And you can see I'm going to print it out here in this F string. I'm going to print it out here in the F string. I'm going to print it out, let's go down here, in this F string. But look, this is really critical here. I'm not just printing it out. I'm using it as part of my dictionary. And I'm going to do a search. What is my regular expression that I'm going to search using? I am going to search using validation pattern sub. The key is going to be the first time through MAC address. So the first time through, I'm using RE MAC address. The second time through, where everything is doing IP address, I'm going to be using the IP address. The third time through, the host name, and the fourth time through, the email. Okay, that's what that's going to do. Very short snippet of code there, but it actually is kind of nice, efficient, handy, reasonably tight, and hopefully you'll agree it does what we're looking to do. All right, now let's begin to look at these regular expressions. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to actually run this code so that we can see how it works. So I'm going to run it. Here it's going to pop up and it's going to say enter MAC address or carriage return to quit. How's it doing that? Well, remember, we have these things defined. Here's actually that string MAC address. I'm doing a for loop. The first time through, I'm going to be printing dash 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 validation type. What's my validation type? The first time through, the first item in the validation list is MAC address. So it says MAC address verification, and then it's going to ask me to enter validation type. That's MAC address or carriage return to quit. So what it's going to do then, of course, we saw it's going to do this search to see if it's valid. So I'm going to type in a MAC address 1122-33445566, and let's see. Okay, it told me that I have a valid MAC address. It told me what it was, and it told me where it was located at index 0. All right, so that looks good. So what if I type in a bad one? Like what if I do 1 1, just 1 1? What it's going to say? So here it gives me, it repeats what I gave, and then it randomly chooses a rude remark. Give me a break, Jake. If I was to type in something like AA-BB-CC-DD, we're getting closer, but it's not all the way there. So AA-BB-CDEF, that looks okay. And sure enough, it's okay. So what if I wanted to say my Mac is 11-22-33-44-55-66? So given what I typed in before, I'm hoping that it will match this MAC address because it's indeed in there. And so when I hit return, here it says, it reprints it to me. Nice try, McFly. So evidently this failed. Why did it fail? Well, I can look at this and tell from my regular expression. Now remember, we looked at the regular expression, and what did we learn? One of the things we learned is that this caret says the beginning of the line. And so if we wanted to match it in other places other than the beginning of the line, let's see if I can hit the backspace key correctly, or at the end of the line so I can match it anywhere. Then let's go ahead and kill this and run it again. And I'm going to type in my Mac 11-22-33-44-55-66. And with those changes, it is now telling me that it's a valid MAC address and that it found it at index number 8. And if you were to count all the way here, you would find that the 1 is actually at index 8. So looking at our MAC address regular expression here, we can see, and I'm not going to attempt to give you an exhaustive everything about regular expressions discussion here. I just want you to understand what it is that's happening. And this is actually a reasonably simple regular expression to parse. So let's start in the inside and work our way out. Look at this thing right here. This says 0-9. That's something that we didn't talk about before, but that basically says it's shorthand for doing 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I can say 0-9 and it will match any character that is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. And the same is true for A to F. So it's going to match any character that's capital A to capital F. And it's going to match small a to small f. So I have expanded this made it a little bit more lenient so you can do small letters so I don't have to be typing in capitals. And oh, what does it say about matching that character? There have to be 2 of them. So in other words, you need to be doing the entire 2-character sequence so that it's going to be a valid MAC address. Okay, so this is one of the things that you need to be aware of, and we talked about this. This is the what is it, quantifier, the number of instances of this. There have to be 2 of this. And what is it followed by? Well, here's our square brackets again, and our square brackets are going to tell us that it can match either of these characters inside it. So it can match a colon or a dash. Okay, and basically what we see here after that, after those, the colon or the dash, it says there needs to be 0 or 1 of these. So that tells you that it can be a colon, or it can be a dash, or it can be 0, neither of them. And there's going to be 5 of these whole things together, 5 of these pairs of characters that it's going to be looking at. And then the last thing that we see is one final item right here. Why don't we have 6 here? Well, because the 6th one, and you're going to see this pattern a lot, we don't want to allow there to be a colon or a dash after it. We want it to end just with this, what you see right here. And this is basically exactly the same as what you see right here. Okay, so it's matching this particular 2-character sequence, which is what you have in a MAC address in something like this. Now, one of the things that you'll notice is, well, I could do this 112233445566, and it's going to accept it. I could do 11:22:33:44:55 and then there's no colon after the last one, 66. And that one says that it's valid as well. Now, one other thing that you may notice is that I can do 11:22:33:44-5566 because I can either have 0 or 1 of these items, these dashes or colons. And so I believe this one will be okay. Now, just to make things weird, you'll notice I could also do 11:22-334455-66. Now, we would look at that and we would say, well, that doesn't look like a MAC address to me. But our regular expression, which I got from a site that said this is the best MAC address evaluator for regular expressions that there is, clearly there are things that you and I as a human would say, well, that's not exactly correct. In order to do this correctly and to enforce that you need to do either this way with all consistent colons, or maybe this way would have like dots like Cisco does, you might want to do something a little bit different, and you would have to repeat it and things get long. So you see both the benefit and the value of MAC address regular expression, this one that you see, as well as potential downsides. And I did get this, I didn't come up with this on my own, but there are many sites where you can say, hey, show me a valid regular expression for a MAC address. And the same is true for IP address. I'm going to go through here. I'm hitting return, and now I'm in my IP address verification. Remember our for loop? I was going MAC IP, and so now I'm in my MAC address, and so I can do 1.2.3.4, and that should be okay. And if I do 1.2.3, that should not be okay. If I do 254.1.1, that should be okay. But if I do 256.254.1.1, that should be a problem. And it's not. And guess why not? This surprised me, but I made a change to what the regular expression was. The regular expression for IP address used to have, remember our friend here, our little caret that said it's got to begin with this and it has to end with that. And so what did it do? Look closely. I typed in 256 and it actually found 56.254.1.1. So it actually found a valid IP address in this sequence, but it didn't do exactly what we were looking for, because as a human I would look at that and say, wait a minute, that's wrong. But as a computer, obeying our regular expression, this turned out to be incorrect. So what you'll see a lot of the time is you will see, for looking for stuff, you will see carets at the beginning and you will see $ at the end because of things just like what I saw here. So let's delete this. Sorry, let's not delete it. Let's stop it. And let's ignore this, and let's now do 256.1.1.1, and this should tell us that it's bad. But if I do 254.1.1.254, it should say that it is okay. Now, we could argue a long time about different things like what's a valid host name, what's a valid email address. You can look at these things. I don't want to spend a ton of time. You can see the email address one is quite long, and I don't want to teach you how to do all of these, but what I did want to teach you is how to make sure that that you can use regular expressions in your Python code. So let's just enter a host name just for kicks. Let's say www, see if I can type it out, .clack.com. That looks like a host name. Host name Chuck, is that a valid host name? Yeah, apparently it is. I'm not sure what I need to do to be a valid host name. Let's see, I'm looking at it right now. It's allowing a whole bunch of different things. Yeah, let's just do this. Is that a valid host name? Apparently that's not, so I put some garbage in there that makes it an invalid host name. I'm not sure if it was a colon, probably would be one thing. That would be my guess. I put a colon in there that is not allowed. What about email address? chuck@c.com. That looks okay. c@c.com. That looks okay. c.com. That's not a valid email address, so it's definitely looking for the @ sign. And if we were to look here at our email, then you can see this is our regular expression where it's basically matching everything under the sun, and you can have one or more of those followed by an @ sign. So did you know that in a valid email address, according to this anyway, you can have something like a dot or an exclamation point or a pound sign or a $sign or any of these items. Let me point this out just so that you know, again, we're not going deeply into this. You can, when you are within these square brackets, it's going to match one character, and so you don't have special characters in here. So see all these special characters? They are not special because why? They're inside these square brackets. These square brackets say match one of those. So I can theoretically say question mark. Let's see if this works. I haven't actually tried it. Question mark chuck@c.com. It tells me that's a valid email address. And I actually, in the real world, I don't know if that's true, but this is one, again, that I pulled off of the web that it's trying to match. And here you can see when it's matching after the @ sign, then it's going to be matching a bunch of different characters. It's trying to limit the number of characters that you can have, and there is a whole bunch of extra special stuff in here that I'm not going to go into because this is not a regular expression class. It's a Python usage of regular expression classes. And if you want to try something like this out, then go back to our friend here and put the thing in there and see what happens, what you can match and what you can't match. Okay, a couple of things that occurred to me you may have questions about. What is this R? This looks like an F string, except we're using an R. What does that mean? What it means is that this is a raw string in Python, and raw strings, you do not have to put escape characters in order to put special characters inside the string. So you don't need to do backslashes inside your string. So this is a raw string. Python lets you put whatever you want, and things like I've noticed PyCharm will attempt to add escape characters if it sees you trying to add them to a string. In our situation, like a backslash, this allows just the backslash to be in there. So that's what a raw string is. The second thing is, you may be saying, well, I'm not sure I understand how I can take this and put it into, let's say, take this one and put it into that regular expression thing. Here I'm going to do Control C. I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to get rid of what I did, and I'm going to just put this in here, and I'm going to get rid of my extra stuff, and I'm going to just do delete, 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 delete. And now I have my regular expression. And so this was matching host names. So what did I say? C.com, matching a host name, and it did not match. So that indicates to me that I have done something incorrect. And I look here, I left a quote mark in there. Let's see if that fixes it. It did fix it. And you notice it tries to color code things so that you can find them a little bit easier. So C.com, if I just do C, that apparently is good. If I do gobbledygook here, .com, that's not going to be okay. If I do that, that's okay. If I do C dot, that's not okay. If I do .com, that's not okay. Let's see, can I do one.com? Yeah, I can do one.com. So here, this just gives you an idea how you can use this regular expression evaluator to determine if your regular expression is working the way that you thought it was. And if you want more information, then you can go through here. Like I can hover over this and it says this is a quantifier. It matches between 0 and unlimited number of these things. This right here is a Boolean. It's an OR. This right here matches the character dot literally. So in regular expressions, dot has special meaning. So we need to escape that. Yeah, and then this is the end of the line. This is 0 or more, etc. It gives you a little tutorial as you do it, so you can see that it's quite helpful. All right, so let's review what we talked about in this lesson. We gave some introductory look at regular expressions and a few of the things that you could do. After that, we jumped into the code. We looked at some of the regular expressions, but first we looked at this code and how it worked with this while true statement going through different types of validation patterns, and we defined those validation patterns up here, and we used those in order to evaluate the data that we entered to see if it was valid or not. And as you can see over here, some of the responses indicate that it was valid, some of them indicate that it was invalid. So while not an exhaustive list at regular expressions, hopefully this gets your feet wet a little bit in how you can use regular expressions in your Python code. Hope it was helpful.